Okay,
Let me
so
turn off
Donna,
the notification before I do that, so I
oh,
don't have like all these beeping sound.
okay.
Do not disturb. Yeah,
Oh,
for
okay.
1 hour. Okay, that's good.
All right, cool, cool. So, Donna, thank you so much for joining us to talk about your latest work in becoming an even more, I guess, skilled healer, and also talk to us about, winter and preparing for people who might have forgot the last time we did this. But I just want to introduce our audience to you who might not know you already. You are a licensed acupuncturist, Donna Chang, sorry, L.A.C., M.S.O.M. What does all that mean, M.S.O.M.?
Master of Science, and back then they call it Oriental Medicine, but they're taking that out, so may change that
Oh.
part. Yeah.
Okay, where did you study?
And the AIMC Berkeley, so that is the Acupuncture and Integrative Medicine College in Berkeley.
Mhm. Yeah, they've been around a while.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, and you are a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist, body intuitive practitioner, holistic nutrition and lifestyle counselor, transformational coach, and you write about and I'm actually on your website, Alameda Community ACU.com, who we are, and you write that you founded Alameda Community Acupuncture because you are passionate about making trauma-informed holistic health care widely accessible, and you love being in community. Besides being an acupuncturist and herbalist, you're also a healing guide. You write that you love guiding people towards a deeper understanding of the stories behind their symptoms and a deeper connection with their body's innate healing wisdom. And you grew up in Hong Kong, and you're also a visual artist. You're a painter, and people can read more about your background there. And you speak English, Cantonese, and Mandarin. And I was just thinking about how when you were talking about sort of helping people understand the stories behind their symptoms and have a deeper connection with their body's innate healing wisdom, I wanted you to talk a little bit about storytelling and how in this conversation and in this getting to know ourselves, our bodies, our organs, our systems have stories. And when we settle and we're quiet, we can actually hear and get to know ourselves a little better, and then work together on healing whatever might be presenting itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thanks. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I think it's the third time I'm on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the storytelling, that's a big part of healing. And I just also want to sometimes like separate between like history and story, because sometimes like story is what we tell ourselves about what happened or what is happening or what will happen. And so that's a little bit different from the history.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have like one event that happened, you can have like 10 people retell the story, and they will like say like they will emphasize on different things, and they may have like different emotions that like from that event, and they may even have like different narratives that's like from that same event. So the stories that we tell ourselves is a big part of our lives, and it's a big part of our healing journey. And well, there are a lot of research that shows that how when we rewrite that story, our trajectory of our healing path can also change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. Well, I'm one of your patients, and yes, been coming to see you, I don't know, a lot
For
of
a few
years.
years.
Well, before that, I was coming to see you. Yeah. I mean, 3 years, like exclusively. But yeah, I don't know. I have to go back and check my my receipts
Mhm.
to see when I started. But yeah, since I live and work in Alameda, you're my neighbor.
Yeah.
And so yeah, goes, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm thinking 5, 6 or so, maybe more years. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've been at the same location for the last 11 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Cause I noticed you,
Mhm.
like when I walked, I used to have a friend who lived on on Santa Clara, and you're right there on the corner
Yeah,
of Lincoln. What's that cross street right there where you are?
Minturn.
Minturn. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like, and it's, bright and welcoming with the big windows and the
Mhm.
graphic. And now it's just had a new facelift, so you can't miss it.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been a consumer for a minute and have enjoyed every minute of that. I always feel uh so much better, just I mean, when I step into the space, the energy is just so welcoming, and I always feel so much better, when I leave. So yeah, so my body thanks you.
Yeah.
And my energy, which, is flowing, thanks you. Um,
Thank
but
you. And it's basically it's the whole community, everyone who come who that contributes to the energy of the place.
mhm,
And I remember like sometimes we get comments of like how people were like, oh, they're lying on the table, and even before I start needling, they're already feeling rested. And but yeah, so that's something that I appreciate so much about our community members, people who come to the clinic, and you all make it, yeah, the place it is. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, because I know, in a more clinical setting, like for instance, Kaiser offers acupuncture, but
Mhm,
it's not community acupuncture. You're in the room by yourself,
mhm,
uh, which feels different because in the community acupuncture setting, you're in the room with other people, also in chairs or lying down,
mhm,
you know, getting healed. So, like you said, the energy, the healing energy is circulating.
mhm.
And so I think there's more energy, more power in that kind of healing than in being in the room all by yourself. Um, so yeah, so it's a different experience. I've done both.
Mhm,
The only thing with Kaiser, it's for pain management only. And so
mhm,
you only get so many visits. But it's
mhm.
so funny. I've run into uh, clinicians who work
Ah,
in the community acupuncture
mhm,
settings as well.
mhm.
And they talk about some of their mentors. So it's kind of cool because I would always mention, do you know this place? Do you know Donna? Do you know Jorge? Do you know? And they
Ah.
would say, yeah, I'm studying da da da. So it was like pretty cool, like they're at Kaiser now, but they're gonna be in the community. And also community acupuncture makes it more accessible, like you mentioned, for
Yeah.
everyone. It's not as expensive
Yeah.
because you want the healing. There's a whole philosophy around that we have spoken of before. So I don't
Uh-huh.
want to spend all our time
Mhm,
talking about something that people can go and watch, from the archives,
mhm,
or listen to from the archives. But you, I don't know if you want to like maybe sort of give a review of your the coaching method, and then we end up with the Elaine Duncan work that you're currently, you know, um, uh, immersed in the Tao of Trauma, and in the polyvagal theory meets Chinese medicine, and the somatic experiencing. The five-phase theory of traditional Chinese medicine. I'm just sort of running through my notes here. And trauma response. Trauma response. She works uh, she worked with veterans and established a whole protocol around that. Yet, there are a lot of us, that have experienced trauma, as
mhm,
children, and now we're grown people, and we're
mhm,
still trying to work that through because, as she mentions, um, what did she say? That we've developed a way to function, despite, these things that are going on inside of us that, from the trauma. And so she mentioned that a lot of times when we come into alternative therapies, the practitioner might not know what we're dealing with because we present wellness. We present everything is good when everything is not necessarily good. And then she mentioned, which I thought was kind of interesting, um, the 5-element approach to neuropsychology. And she mentioned these points. And she mentioned like these points in the ears. And she said if it was going to be a long-term relationship, then they would do it this way. And if it was going to be a shorter term, she called it the high five. And so anyway, and she mentioned Acupuncturists Without Borders as a space. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Acupuncturists Without Borders. Are you one of those people? Are you a member of that group?
No, they do have, I don't know if they have staff acupuncturists, but I know they definitely have volunteer programs. And like for acupuncturists to like go into different parts of the world actually, to do acupuncture in places that have, like, say they just had natural disaster or something that's like catastrophic that happened, and they will so they work in different areas that, like, it's really where people are really in need of acupuncture, but that, like, they may not have regular access to it. And but like that's the extent that I know about Acupuncturists Without Border. I think it's beautiful work that they're doing, very important in this age and time. And they do have a lot of training programs as well for acupuncturists, to do more doing more field work, and also so that they're also trauma informed.
Yeah. So do you want to give us, some background on your work and your expertise, and then we could land and spend the remainder of our time, with the whole work around the polyvagal theory and Chinese medicine and addressing trauma and those that history, because trauma is history, that's still living in us. I would presume to say. And a lot of times that history is in the basement. We don't know that we've got a basement. And then sometimes, what's in the basement comes up and overwhelms us. So it's kind of good to be aware of what we're carrying, ancestrally, presently, because it's a present experience. If a person's been through some things. And I know for me, it also revolves around memory, because sometimes I forget the things that are traumatic.
Yeah.
But they're in my body. My body remembers, but I don't remember until something triggers it. And I'm like, oh, what is that?
Yeah. So I do acupuncture, and like for different conditions, different health conditions, and especially like with pain, chronic pain, a lot of like women's health issues. And but there are a lot of my patients are coming because they have but sometimes it's like, say, oh, they sprained their ankle, or when they're moving they tweak their lower back. But then a lot of times people coming to acupuncture because they have chronic conditions, and these like chronic health conditions, like over time what I realized is that Chinese medicine always recognized the mind, body and spirit, and how like something, one condition, it can actually like it can affect us like emotionally, and like and then sometimes like our emotions can also affect our health, and how, and like, so like over time what I realized, especially in the last 3 years, I've been like really immersed in more nervous system healing and studying and also practicing coaching. And because also what I realize, like when I'm doing wellness coaching or health coaching, is that like there are a lot of the things that what people think of as, like say, to improve their health, that like say, for example, you need to be doing certain health habits. But for someone who has a lot of trauma, and we all have trauma to different extents, often like that actually impacts like how we go about our day and how we go about our lives and how we take care of ourselves and our bodies. And so sometimes it's not so much about like, okay, you know what healthy habit would like say be good for this condition, and then like you just expect them like to just do it, and that like all will be well. And like it's not quite that simple. Like for example, smoking, right? Like if it's like so easy to say like, okay, you know about like the information why smoking is not so great for you, and that you know the statistics, then you would just quit. Like if it's that simple, everyone would do it, right? And it's not. So so a few years ago, I started branching off and study more in terms of like how um, like in terms of behavioral change, and also like how, and also like just like understanding like how to regulate our nervous system. And what I also realized, it's like all these things, they're not just going to help with someone, let's say, resolving a health condition, but it also can help them move on with their life in a way that is more true to their highest self. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about this work with the polyvagal theory in Chinese medicine. And yeah, when you told me about it, it just sounded so exciting. So maybe you could explain it, like what is it, and what are you doing presently with it? How is
Yeah.
it, expanding your healing toolbox?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So the primary coaching work that I do, it's based on it's called like Alethea coaching, and that is a method for self-unfoldment. So a lot of times, like in coaching, or even when people trying to improve their health, um, it comes from a standpoint of like, say, I want to improve this aspect of my life because it's because like this is like deficient in it. But a lot of times, like what we also have to realize, like say, for example, when I say like, oh, I have this condition, and then there's a difference between like say, like seeing ourselves as deficient because I have this illness,
Mm-hmm.
because I done something wrong, it's my fault. And but like instead of like saying feeling like, oh, okay, my body's going through this health conditions, and but also seeing myself as whole, and instead of like something that needs to be fixed. And so like in an unfolding approach, like what I do is like when I sit down with someone, and we really check on like what is present. And sometimes like we don't know until like say you really sit down and like start doing some breath work, and then you realize, oh, this is present. Or you may be telling a story, and when I like say would invite someone, really checking in like what their body's sensing, what's they're sensing in their body. And then like it's like it unfolds from there. And so that's like the primary I would say like the essence of of my coaching work is like really bringing back, like say, helping someone to be present with what is here. And sometimes like there are a lot of things that we don't want to face, and then sometimes like that's part of our survival response. and that's probably our trauma playing out. And so there's a way to inquire and about it, but then in a gentle way, because like with trauma, what we always want to be mindful of is like trauma happens when if something is like too much too fast, and that can also can like say when we're trying to heal a body, too much too fast can also happen like when you're trying to do too much all at the same time. That can also shock the body. And so besides too much too fast, and another way that like the body can go into trauma response is like too little for too long, or too much for too long. Or it can be like, say, using pandemic as an example, too little contact for too long, like too little hugs for too long, like in the last few years, with like, say, seeing our families too little for too long, and especially like without inadequate support, when the amount of stressors, when the not just amount, but the severity of the stressors is overwhelming to overwhelm our body, and that we don't have enough resources to actually like, to navigate that stressor. And then with these conditions, and what happened is that we can heal from this, but sometimes when we don't have the permission to, or space or time to heal from this, and that's how like traumas get stored in our body, not just in our brain, but also like at a cellular level. Yeah. Like,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of the coaching work is like when we that is like we also help the client to recognize inner resources. And when we can like, even like sometimes it's like just like recognizing, realizing like, wow, you have more inner resources than you think, and that you are equal to the challenge. And that can be very empowering, and that can like shift our perspective into like, say, and even like the perspective on what you think of as the story.
Yeah, because I know that our minds are wired to keep us safe.
Yes.
And so so the stories that we tell are often catastrophic because because it's all about protection and safety, as opposed to pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Like, who has time for that? Everything is unpleasant until it proves itself right.
I think they kind of went way back to like when we're in like savannah, when we're hunter-gatherers, when like anything negative can mean like you get like it becomes a lion's food, right? So we do have like, it's normal to have a tendency to have negative bias, but then it's also like being present, also, or having the awareness, like okay, this is part of it, and but that might not be the whole story.
Yeah. When I was watching the video that you sent me with the interview with Elaine Duncan, the author of The Dial of Trauma.
I do actually have this book right here.
How is it? How's the read? Is it accessible for those that are not medical, acupuncturists, regular, like it's accessible to regular people?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's definitely geared towards practitioners, and but then I think like it can be like there are like some really good really good like writing about like just from a Chinese medicine point of view, too, and the trauma cycle. So yeah.
Yeah, because she mentioned about uh, the ventral vagus nerve, and I think she said shin, and she talked about the language of the heart
Mhm.
and arousal without stress energy, and then she talked about uncomfortable. So I was wondering if you could talk about, what is the polyvagal theory and connected to Chinese medicine, and she talked about when your heart is calm,
Mhm.
then it regulates in some kind of way. And so I found that really interesting because I do a lot of meditation, and they call out
Mhm.
um, the vagus nerve. They call it out. And then I've also, I do the qigong,
Uh-huh.
and I know about the different elements. The wood, the this, the that, as well as the colors and the sounds. I mean, it's all quite integrated, you know.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what is this that we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. Can be like different questions actually. So like one thing at a time, right?
Oh,
So
totally. Take your time.
polyvagal theory, that's I believe originated by Stephen Porges. And so I think before, like, and there are a lot of videos that probably would go great lengths into it, but how it relates in Chinese medicine is, first of all, let's go with like Chinese medicine. We talk about the yin and yang a lot, right? Everyone use those terms, yin and yang. So, so like when you think of yin and yang, is yin is like more, you can think of like quiet, calm, not much movement, stillness, uh, like more silence, like as opposed to like yang, that's like loud and movement, upward, um, more expansion, um, outward, extroverted, and yin is more introverted, inward. So you think of these like two oppositional energy, and like in terms of our nervous system, very roughly, you can think of like say the yin is yin energy is like what in the polyvagal like be like say in uh like the more parasympathetic nervous system, right? And yang is like the more the sympathetic nervous system, and of course it's a very simplified way to say it, but just I want to like talk a little bit about Chinese theory of yin and yang because it's basically like the foundation of like all different theories in Chinese medicine, or in even the cosmology. And so um, so when we talk about like the Tao of it's like from the Tao, like it emerges like it's like from nothing, from one that emerges, that splits into two, which is like the oppositional force, yin and yang. And so when we talk about like these two forces, they're oppositional, but they're also mutually supportive. And that's something that people may not sometimes like talk about, they just talk about these two opposites, and it's not, so they're not like opposites that like they're fighting each other when it's healthy. And that when one gets to the extreme, like say when yin goes get to the extreme in a healthy way, it would transform into yang. So it like so just like night and day, right? Like one, there is like the early evening, so like that's like okay, starting to be yin time of the day, and then there's like some part of the day that's like the most dark, and after that then like you see a little bit of light, and then you see the sunrise, right? And that is like the yang energy start to grow. And like midday sun is like when the yang is like the most dominant. And then that phase doesn't last forever, right? Because then like once like the sun is like peaked in the midday, and then um, at a certain time, like late afternoon, and then it starts to go down, and then sometimes like you see the moon start coming out, right? So in nature, you see this like yin and yang transformation, um, like in like many different ways. And like in terms of our nervous system, you can think of like say when we are in the sympathetic mode, and then sometimes like people think of sympathetic in your autonomic nervous system as sympathetic. It's like, oh, that means like you're really anxious, nervous, is sympathetic must be bad. I don't want sympathetic, but that's not true. Sympathetic is like it's a state where you actually that moves you forwards to be curious about like, oh wow, I really want to do this. I want to like I want to like push myself to finish this deadline. And that's but then like we're always in that mode, and not allowing ourselves to go into the yin, which is like the opposite, which is like the parasympathetic, and that can become a problem, right? And but like on the other hand, like say if it's so far is it like, do you have any questions?
No, keep on going. This is great.
Yeah. So in the parasympathetic, like you've heard of vagus nerve, right? And so there are a lot of like talks, and like now it has become more mainstream in terms of like how to tone your vagus nerve, or you heard about like the vagal tone, and
No, I don't know that. The
increasing
vagal
the
tone.
increasing the vagal tone. So basically, the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and it's the longest cranial nerve in our body. It goes from like our brainstem here and all the way to like say different organs. It innervates like all our major organs, in fact. So like when you have you heard of the gut being the second brain, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, or like because so we have this enteric nervous system. That's basically like our gut is our second brain. In fact, like our 90% of serotonin is produced in our gut. So and that's like how does it get like from your brain here to down here, right? So you can see the vagus nerve as the information superhighway. And so when you do different like vagus nerve exercises, and it can like because it innervates like so many different parts, like say it can goes to like our throat, and like say so when you do like chanting or even gargling, that also help like tone our vagus nerve, right? So it's a two-way information highway, like so. So sometimes when we do things, like even just like putting one hand on your heart, the other hand like on your belly, and just like doing some deep breathing, and that also like send information to our brain to help calm us down. And in like so if we are like have a healthy vagal system, and like and that is like the part of our nervous system that enables us to be social, to read like facial cues, and like listening to like, oh, the tone of the voice, and so that we can be social, and also like say, oh, when we let's say if someone let's say if your neighbors like you have a new neighbor and they're kind of loud, like when we are having a healthy vagus nervous system, we can just say, okay, you know what are ways that we can resolve this like in amicable way, so that you can still think of like, so you can be good neighbors, so that you may have a talk with them. You tell them like, oh, I hear a lot of like this noise, and when I hear that like and this is how it's affecting me, and so you can have a discussion. So instead of like say if we just go into sympathetic, which is like say you into your overdrive, then you like start seeing everything, or like if that's a chronic unhealthy way, then you may start seeing some like everything as a threat in a way that you need to push back, you need to be reactive. Let's say, instead of like go have a discussion with them, maybe you call the police, or
Oh, wow.
or you knock on their door and yell at them or something like that. So but then like but then there's also the flip side, right? Of like say the other side of the nervous system is like another component of your uh, nervous system is the dorsal
Yeah,
vagal, like
you mentioned that. Yes.
yeah. So there's like low tone and like versus high tone vagal, like low tones. And when you like meditate and you feel calm and just like settled, the body is in rest and digest, and that's all good, right? But then like, but sometimes like it's more like we are in high tone vagal, which is like we just freeze.
Mm.
And let's say like your neighbors making a lot of noise, and then like we are basically not just seeing it as a threat, but then let's say like, but then like instead of like say figure out like what's a good like way to discuss with your neighbor, or like say in the sympathetic where you're banging the door and yelling at them, instead you're just like, you feel really disturbed, but you say nothing, and that you're isolating, you're freezing, you're telling yourself that like, well, nothing I'm ever do it's gonna be like able to correct this. I'm just gonna suffer, and no one's gonna help me. And we can like get in that state where it can be really paralyzing. And even like say not like using that kind of more like example, like where it is more like how to say, like visual, like some of the stuff, sometimes it's more subtle in our lives. It can like say like at an extreme end, it can like cause us like say to collapse, and we like may feel depressed, we just can't even like say the yin, that is like the pathological yin state. Yeah. And when like say yin, that's like, oh, you can't, it's not even resting. Like it's like sometimes it's like you may even feel that like you're resting, but then but at the same time you don't ever seem like you're getting enough rest. Or that like like how our nervous system is affecting us, like say on a daily basis. Is like, oh, you may feel like, okay, you're fine, but then like say maybe someone may be like, oh, you know what, even when I try to rest, I'm not really resting. So that's when like, so it's like this yin and yang in Chinese medicine. It's like when it's like this, instead of being this like smooth like transformation, like naturally, like just and that's always this tug of war. Yeah.
I guess that keeps it interesting, huh?
It's fascinating.
Yeah. I guess if I don't know, it's sort of like, there's gravity that keeps us planted, and we're not aware of that gravitational pull.
Yeah.
Because it's there.
Uh-huh.
Similarly, having these two energy forces that are part of our lives, our body, our makeup, and the whole thing around the balance. And I think when I was watching the video, I think the dorsal was akin to or compared to like water or liquid.
Yeah.
And we think about water. Water is a really good medium to see stillness and rupture because water moves when it's liquid. So and so when I think about chi, I kind of think about a flow, and I think of water, um,
Yeah, yeah.
and sort of like wanting the flow to be happening, like not
Mhm,
wanting to get stuck. So how do you use this information in your acupuncture practice? Um,
mhm,
you know, when someone presents to you, for assistance for treatment.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So when a lot of times like in sympathetic, if someone like for example is in like sympathetic mode a lot, and like in Chinese medicine, because that's more yang,
Mhm.
and more heat, so it may present as like more heat,
Mm,
and then so, but sometimes it's like the heat is in the body, it's not like in a way that it's like evenly distributed, right? Sometimes we want, actually ideally we want actually to have a warm belly and cool head.
mhm,
But a lot of times it's the opposite. We're like you have too much heat, too much energy in our heads, and but then our feet are cold.
mm,
And so in acupuncture we try to balance like the energy. Like sometimes like there are acupuncture points that it's like cooling inflammation,
mhm,
um, and so that's one way to work with it. And yeah, so like so sometimes like when I do some palpation before I needle, I'd always want to check like what is the temperature like in different places of the body.
mhm,
And because I actually, when your nervous system is like has an um imbalance, that affects our body temperature as well. Mhm.
mhm,
Yeah. But yeah, we use acupuncture to help regulate nervous system. And the coaching, it's what I also find that coaching can be very helpful when someone always seems to experience, like say, a certain pattern that they can't seem to move out of. And
mhm,
so a nervous system coaching, or what I call like a deep wellness coaching, it's just like help people to learn to regulate their nervous system in the way that that helps them um, have more fulfillment in their lives. And because like when our nervous system is dysregulated, we cannot make good decisions. That's
mhm,
just as simple as that. Like
mhm,
we make this, like we may see threats when there something can be a very small problem, and but we may see it as like something so big that almost like insurmountable threat. And then we may make our decisions because we think that it's such a big threat, and so it affects our cognitive skills. Mhm.
mm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
And oh, yeah, so like kind of go back to what you mentioned earlier, because you mentioned the heart and the shin. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're actually covering a lot of bases here today. It's like every thread, it's like, people study for for a long time. But so we're kind of touching like an overview of like different things. But so in Chinese medicine, we think of you used the term Shen earlier, right? And that is consciousness. That's
Mm,
like translated as consciousness. And so we in Chinese medicine we talk about like the five elements, like what you talked about earlier, but that like each uh, organs that's associated with the five elements also houses a different aspect of our soul. Or
mm,
sometimes it may be translated as the five spirits or the five souls, or you can like I can think of it more as like five different aspects of the souls, and then there's like um the higher spirits and the more instinctual souls. And I mean, like, different uh theories of like human spirituality, we use like the word souls and spirit in different ways. But basically in Chinese medicines, like we believe that like the trauma is actually stored in the lower spirits, or the souls that is in your, that's basically that regulates like the instincts, gut.
Mhm.
And so when but then when we're frightened, like say when there's like an overwhelming experience, what happened is, and then I actually backtrack a little bit, and then like the Shen, which is, but there's like the big Shen, which is like the Shen that's like, which means spirit or soul, that is like in our hearts. That is like we can see it as the emperor that oversees like the whole body, all the different souls, right? That's the monarch. That's like the organizing principle of the self,
Mm.
self with a big S. So when you think of like when we are fully like in our body, in ourselves, it's almost like well, the emperor is sitting on the throne. And when there's an overwhelming experience and like all these like just like emotions that really rocks your whole body, and it's almost like the Shen, or the emperor, has like left the throne. And so, and then like the five souls, like they don't no longer has a guide, right? And so so it's like the whole empire is in chaos when like that happens. Like empire of your body, mind, spirit, it is in chaos. You can think of it's almost like an orchestra, and all of a sudden like the conductor left. Like the heart, it's like the conductor. It's what regulates like the coherence of the whole body, right? So when that happens, like it's almost like the Shen has, like we can see that in people sometimes, right? Like when you feel, when in Chinese medicine, when we say like, oh, it's like you look at someone and it's as if their Shen is not there. Or like it's like kind of like you maybe talking to someone and it's like, okay, are you there? And it's like this, I think the analogy would be like, go into a room, the light is on but no one's there. And so yeah, so and when that happened to us, and it's like we no longer would feel or speak or know who we are, or we think we know who we are, but it's not really our true nature. And that is trauma. Trauma is like, it's basically like it's like part of our consciousness got shut off. So, and that becomes unconscious. Right? And so trauma healing is like bringing consciousness like back into those places where the Shen has like left. And it's like shining a light and like gently like trying to bring you back to your body. And because it first affects our body, it's so we can't just talk about it and make it all better. It has to be somatic. And that's why in the coaching work that I do, like it's like it's really like embodiment is so important. Yeah.
Oh, what a great story. Oh my gosh, Donna, that was phenomenal. So I was wondering, can you review for those of us who don't know? You mentioned the 5 elements and the organs and the souls. I was wondering, can you tell us the organ, the element?
Yeah, so the 5 elements is well, actually like each element, like it's associated with an organ or a pair of organs, and then also a season.
Oh,
And right now we're in the water elements of the year. And that's winter. And that is correspond to the kidneys and urinary bladder, but then like as kidney is the vital organs. and it houses the spirit that it houses is called Zhi, which is will.
Mm.
Will, not just like willpower, and that's like a whole we can do a whole chapter on just will. And so yeah, so and the emotions of is fear for the
Oh,
water element. Yeah, so it's yeah, so basically the winter medicine, or what you can say, it's like because like right now today it's January 11th in the Bay Area, we are experiencing this winter storm.
yes.
And so it's very so yeah, so if we have time we can like talk more about like more specific winter element wisdom. But so yeah, so and in the five elements, so the five elements, or actually it's like more, it it's better translated as the five phases, because you can think of the five phases in the cycle. And so water nourishes wood, and that's the wood element, or the wood phase. And so, and that is corresponding to the organs, the liver and the gallbladder. And the spirit that it houses is called the Hun, which is our ethereal soul. And emotions that it it's like about anger. And sometimes like when someone has, like, say, a lot of frustration in life, a lot of stress, that really also impact the liver, when, like, because the liver's energy can get stagnant, and that also affect the flow of the chi. So so that's a wood element in a nutshell. And that, like, wood nourishes fire, because you can like burn firewood, right?
Mhm.
um and so the fire element, the organs associated with it is the heart,
Mm.
and small intestine, actually. And so, as we talked about earlier, it houses the spirit that houses is called Shen. Mhm. Yeah. And the emotions is joy, or sometimes like in the more pathological way, or lack of joy sometimes.
Mm.
And so after fire, and you can think of like the fire on top, and then like after that is it moves to the earth elements, because fire, like, say, um uh it nourishes earth, because, like, there is, like, say, fire, and after what's burned off, the ashes, it can also nourish the earth, right?
Mhm.
Mhm. So and so the earth elements, that is corresponding to the spleen and the stomach. So that's all about digestion, not just like digesting food, but also digesting life experiences. And that's
Mm.
also really important in like digesting what happened. And that is like the in like all events that can cause trauma. And that's also like, oh, what happened? Can someone fully digest that experience?
Mm.
And so the spirit that it houses is intention, and the emotions, or that it's corresponding to, is like it's intention or intellect. It's and the spirit that it houses is yi, which is, it's basically intention.
Mhm.
And then earth nourishes metal. So metal element is lungs and large intestines. Those are paired organs. And the emotions that is corresponding to it is grief.
Mm.
And it's all about like letting go, and also taking in what's new. And and also like inspiration, and the so this spirit that it houses is it's the corporeal soul, which is called like Po, and that's like the
Say that,
instincts.
say that again.
Po, it's Po. It's
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So, yeah, so that's like the instincts, like somatically, like your felt sense, what you can, and that's what what you can feel, like say like, oh, you feel cold, you feel hot, that's the corporeal soul that helps you feel it.
Mm,
Yeah. I know
huh.
I use the term like soul or spirit interchangeably, but
Mhm.
like in China, because like in Chinese it's all one word. Sometimes like it's hard to translate like exact word to English.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting. So, what were the seasons? We got
Hmm.
winter. What
Yeah,
was
yeah.
spring and summer and fall?
Yeah, so like water element, that's winter, and
Hmm.
then wood element is spring,
Okay.
and fire element, that is summer, and then earth element, that is late summer,
Okay.
and the metal element um, is autumn or fall.
Okay. Oh, this is so interesting.
Yeah.
When are you gonna write your book?
Yeah, if I have time. But yeah,
Hmm?
it's all these really fascinating like things, like when I learn about the nervous system and trauma, and like how it's being talked about in the more biomedical sense, and it's all brings back to like, oh wow, yeah, in Chinese medicine, that's how it corresponds, and it's almost like just see it as like different. It's like this like sphere of reality. You're looking at it this way, you're looking at it that way, and it just actually helped me understand, um
Hmm.
yeah, this whole
Yeah.
thing better.
Right. Yeah. Because you also mentioned, about the tarot cards and not
Yeah,
not the reading, but what emotion comes up for you with the picture. And I thought,
yeah,
oh,
wow,
that's so
this is
interesting.
another big topic. You can
Oh, yeah,
think
yeah.
about like the
Mhm.
imaginal and dream work,
Mm,
and
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so interesting. And then I just think just right now, you're a painter. And I was just thinking it would be so cool. You heard it here first. If you could like take a painting and
Mhm.
then juxtapose it with, just because you said you were going to be dreaming now, on your sabbatical. And I
Yeah.
was just like, it doesn't have to be a clinical
Mhm.
book necessarily, but it could just be, Donna dreaming, you know?
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah.
cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So anyway, I,
Yeah,
I would I would love to read that book.
yeah, yeah. And talk about dreaming. And I think January is a great time for dreaming. It's all the time. It's a great time for dreaming in terms of like noticing doing dream journals and stuff. But a lot of times, like in January, January 1st, people do their New Year resolution, and goals, and all that stuff, right? But then I actually, it was still deep in winter, and actually sometimes the best thing to do is not just getting enough rest, but then like really pay attention to your dreams, and like what's yeah, just paying attention to that, and then we can make our goals and plans.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what else should we be doing now that it's cold and we're in the house? Hopefully, people are warm and have enough
Mhm.
shelter,
Mhm.
security. So, what else, if we are in that space, should we be doing besides paying attention to our dreams? And
Yeah.
what else could we be doing to enhance our lives
Yeah, I think
and our spirits?
it's like tending the fire,
Mm,
tending the fire within. And like it's like earlier when we talked about the yin and yang, right? And like, but what you notice is like at the both the black largest area of black, for example, in the yin in the yin yang symbol, there is a
Mhm,
white dot, and then like the largest like white part, there is a black dot, right?
mhm,
So that's like in the yin and yang, it's like even though we're in the water element and we're talking about like the very yin time of the year,
mhm,
and especially like we're like 1 month, well, not about like what 3 weeks after solstice, and then you can like think of like the fire within that's like growing.
mm,
And so yeah, so besides like things like eating warm foods and like just keeping warm, and it's just really really important to think of like just like the little things, like even that like helps, like they like say for example if someone's been in isolation for a long time, but that's a very yin phase, right? Like inward and
mhm,
isolating, but I really think about like, or just feel like say um whenever like say you have connection with someone and have a good laugh, and like even just the little things and really like tending those fire. Mhm.
mhm,
And sometimes that's like what we can do, right? In the dark, like in dark times in winter, where they think of it as like nighttime.
mhm,
We're like basically keeping the fire going so that like say, oh, so that we can get through the winter, right?
mhm,
And that it's also like say movement. So it's like we talk a lot about getting enough rest, getting enough sleep, but then it's also like um important to keep moving at the same time. Like
mhm,
yeah, during the days too, like so that you may not be like say do some intense workout like for an hour if you have not been like say working out um for like in the last couple of months. You don't want to jump back into it, but then like tending the fire in that sense would just mean okay, maybe every day you spend like a few minutes doing something a little bit more intense, or like say you trying to like just like getting your chi flowing, loosen your joints by doing some stretching, qigong, and then you just really feeling like oh your joints are lubricated, and then like you let that like fire grow and grow, and then maybe like after you do that and then be like oh maybe I want to do something a little bit more intense, but instead of let's say a 45 minutes bike class, maybe just like well I'll do 5 minutes, like just like get on it for 5 minutes, and tomorrow maybe I'll do 5 minutes slow biking plus like 30-minute sprint, 30-second sprint, and then you
mhm,
just like kind of tending that fire. Yeah.
mhm. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been such a lovely conversation. Yeah, I couldn't have scripted it better.
Thank you for
Oh,
having me here. I love
yeah.
talking about like all these things, and it's like winter always get me into a time where like not just like talking about health. I've done like videos where it's like immune
Mhm,
health and this and that, and winter is always a time that I just really just love to like think of the theories and philosophies like about like all these things that we're doing. Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have this meditation that I really like. It's a guided meditation. I like those the best. And then in the meditation, it's from Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh's um, uh, monastery home in France, and so they have all these videos. And one video in particular, it's only like 11 minutes, and it's showing love to our body. The
Mm,
meditation is called,
mhm.
and this monk, she takes us through our body, and it just makes I do the meditation before I go to sleep every night. It just makes me feel so good. And
Mm,
then at the end, she talks about how, all of the different parts of our body are like our jewels. And then she
mhm.
says, I am so rich and I am so happy. And I just think all of these different uh, languages and tools that we're speaking about right now are ways for us to really appreciate our house, you know, that we're in, and
Uh-huh.
and to um, reverence it, because it's not a permanent house. You
Uh-huh.
know, like nobody stays here forever. And like you mentioned, you know, there might be something, uh, you know, some kind of ache or some disease or something's going on with the body, but we're not the disease and we're not the ache. You know,
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
can still appreciate the vessel, the house, because we're here, you know,
Mhm.
like I'm breathing, you're and talking, and you're breathing and you're talking. So it's like, oh my goodness, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I really, really, really like, you know, sort of that particular perspective. And that's why I really, really enjoy, you know, your work as a healer, because you know, it's just, you know, it's an aura, you know, it's and I know, you know, we haven't talked about it, but you know, in the video, the one was talking about, you know, reading the energy. And
Mhm.
now, you know, because of the protocols, you know, you don't look at our tongue. You know, you do take our blood pressure, I mean, our, you know, our pulse, but so it's like you really have to like strengthen your reading energy abilities if you can't look at the tongue, which, you know, which was, I'm sure, you know, gave you a lot of information that you no longer are able to access that way.
Yeah, well, in Chinese medicine, like there are a lot of ways that we read the body to give us clues in
Hmm.
terms of imbalance. Like, yeah, the tongue, like that's one way to do it. Like just to like, noticing the color of the tongue and the tongue coat. And sometimes like when I prescribe herbs, if I feel like it would be helpful, like I would ask them to lower their mask quickly, and then I stick their tongue out at me. But then there are also a lot of ways for us to give us clues, like, like in terms of how the body is, like say the temperature of the skin, the dry, is it moist, is it dry, is it like flaccid, is it like when I palpate on an acupuncture point, is it tight or is it just kind of sinks? And
Mm-hmm.
so all these things give us clues.
Hmm.
And also
Right.
like what you mentioned before, the feeling of pulse. Yeah. Mm,
Hmm.
mm,
Yeah, cool. Well, do
mm.
you have any concluding thoughts? Please give our audience your information about the Alameda Acupuncture Center, like give the address and your website and your phone number. Um, and other than that, do you have any concluding thoughts? Sort of wrap this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I think it's just wow, there's so much that we talked about. But like, yeah, and I just um just concluding thought is like, just know that like, our body is resilient, and like we may have trauma, but we're not locked into it. And so a lot of times what we do as healers is just really giving the body the space and time and to like hold the space, so that that there is permission to heal. There's like so that a person feels that it feels safe enough to be with what is uncomfortable. And so yeah, so yep. So with that said, like, so our center is like Alameda Community Acupuncture, and we're located in Alameda, 1716 Lincoln Avenue, and our number is 510-255-0880. And our website is alamedacommunityacu.com. And I also work virtually with people uh, when we try to do more deeper guiding, when someone needs like more guiding. But right now I'm on sabbatical. I'm in my wintering. So yeah, so that's another avenue to work with me. Mhm.
Cool, super.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Donna, and really appreciated this wisdom, and hope your sabbatical, you know, goes well for you.
Mhm.
And Yeah, I'll be in touch with regards to the coaching.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of big things are happening for me this first part of the year,
Yeah.
through
Great,
spring.
great, great
So,
things too, I heard.
yes, 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 definitely. All right, take good care. And thank you again. This has been so lovely.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Okay,
Take care.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Take care.